Good. Okay, we are live now, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Should. Okay. Yeah. Okay, that looks good on the YouTube side.
Okay.
Uh, Good. Okay. I mean, this basically came from like the Twitter thing that happened. So,
I don't really
um,
remember what did happen. How did we decide to do this?
there was this person who wanted to tap in and write a bunch of stuff about like dating expectations and like how a lot of men are putting pressure on something. We were just basically talking about real self-esteem and everything
Okay.
and self-development. And yet this person was coming like, no, it's not real and it's all fake. Don't trust me. Don't trust people who do it like this. They all pretending.
Yes. Okay. I remember now. I thought I remembered, but I think I was getting like two conversations confused. But yeah, I
Yeah.
remember now.
So and inspired by that, I am so the first point I made here is about like self-realization and mentorship in receiving and giving. I think these are like some parts that usually in my own development they had to come first before anything else happened.
Yes. Well, so do you mind if I give like a little background like on myself before we even like get into that kind of?
Oh, absolutely, please, yeah.
So like for work as a profession, I teach yoga. I've been teaching yoga for over 6 years. Before I was a teacher, I was practicing, studying, traveling to study, training within the realm of yogic philosophy for like 10 years. And the reason why I bring that up and why I think it's relevant is because of like what you just touched on, like this process of kind of like self inquiry, self realization, self understanding. That's what the basis of the philosophy of yoga really is. And I know a lot of people kind of associate, like, especially in the West, like yoga with just being like a workout or stretching, which is really just not at all what yoga is. It's like a ancient philosophy spanning across multiple cultures, religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism. And I've studied like a lot of different, because there's a lot of different avenues through which you can pursue yoga. And my curiosities have led me down the path of tantric yoga, which is really like, obviously self mastery of your own energy is what the basis of what it comes down to. But then as you get deeper into it, it's also studying how we exchange energy with others. And I think like what you just touched on, like self-examination, self-awareness, how can we come into a place of conscious relations with others if we're not consciously relating with ourselves first? And I think that is what so many people are missing or lacking in relationships, is that they look to the outside, to the external, to fulfill something that they feel is lacking within themselves. And so they're always going to be left disappointed if you're always seeking the other person to fill something within you. You're always looking for this other person to like. I think the point that that guy was making was that he was kind of like expecting some woman to show up and she's just going to be this like the woman he feels safe to let his guard down with. And it's like, but if you can't even confront your own shadow, then every woman you encounter, even if she is the most wonderful woman on earth, she's going to trigger the fuck out of you until you're actually ready to hold space for yourself and confront yourself and be ready to like, that's what, to me, what conscious relating is when you're actually able to say like, things are going to get uncomfortable, or we're going to encounter difficulties, but can we work through them together instead of being triggered or running from them, or acting out these dysfunctional patterns that we've learned from childhood, from our parents, from our traumas that we've been through, and these same cycles that we repeat over and over and over unconsciously. And so conscious relationship is like learning how to stand in the discomfort, how to hold space for ourselves, like, and so I know that was kind of like a long rant, but
No, it's great. I love it.
that's kind of where I'm coming from with it. And that was the point, and that's why I feel like I try to articulate that on Twitter. And it's like, if you're not even in the headspace to really even understand what I'm saying, it's so hard to articulate that in one tweet. And then people are like, oh, like you just think men don't want to be vulnerable or something. And I'm like, no, that's actually not at all what I'm saying. That's not at all where I'm coming from at all, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. The funny thing is, like, my introduction into figuring myself out and everything, it was actually also like from a Buddhist perspective.
Okay.
I'm not too deeply going to go into which lineage I am or anything like that. But yeah, that started, and I like how the spiritual aspect can in general help to at first see an outside picture, which you do. Like if you meditate on a Buddha aspect or some Buddha aspect, you obviously meditate on qualities that you have within yourself, but you don't understand it yet. And so you have like the group of people like the Sangha, which you also interact with, and you try to grow and learn from that. And I also took like a 2 year break from it just to figure myself out and get some mental stuff done. Because, as you said, like you have to be able to, if you really want to understand these things, you need your. I don't like it when people say like you have to kill your demons, because I don't think this is how it works. From my experience, you have to face something, because like, behind all of these mechanisms, you have traumas or uh, trust issues and all of that. Like they had a valid reason to be in your life at a certain point, and they had a good and actually life-saving function eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously we go in, like in therapy, we obviously go through the processes of like we slowly introduce ourselves to something that is maybe a better idea, maybe a good idea. And so like slowly we circle or spiral towards something much better. But obviously it's going to take a lot of work. And that is why I listed mentorship. And like, since we talk about dating, a lot of people immediately go into a relationship or into dating expecting from their partners that they are a therapist, that they are a replacement parental figure.
Yes.
And then also dating partner, like that's a lot of stuff to work through. And maybe the other person is gonna get put on an even bigger pedestal. Like this
Yeah.
is
Yeah, if you're that, I mean, I think that like divine partnership, like when I think of divine union as like the divine masculine and the divine feminine coming together, it's two whole entities that are coming together to create a third separate energy. So that's what like the essence of like sacred union, if you look at like even the concept of immaculate conception, from like the idea that the merging of two souls creates connection with God, it creates life, it creates miracles. And so to me, like to be that, to create like that level of union where you're creating a third energy together, you have to be a full and complete embodied self in and of yourself. And that means that like you're not looking for someone else to be your savior, to be your parent, to like fill these holes within you. You've already filled them within yourself. And that like you said, it's not like killing aspects of yourself, it's just awareness of self. Like, can I be fully integrated in all that I am, the difficult parts, the challenging parts? It's like when we actually reject those aspects of ourselves and try to push them away and pretend they don't exist and pretend they're not a part of us, that's when they subconsciously are actually like driving the car instead of us being aware of who we are in our entirety and choosing. Like, I often teach my students that like the mind is kind of like if you were to drive a car through like a muddy road, you would create indentations in that road with the wheels. And then every time you drive down that road, the wheels are going to just naturally go back into those same indentations. So what we have to do is we have to decide, if I don't want to keep going down those same indentations, I want to go, create a different path for myself. I have to consciously choose to do that. I have to become aware of when I'm making these choices that are not serving me. I have to become aware of when I'm reacting in a way that is no longer in service to me. And I just have to be able to see that and then decide, like, am I going to do something different? Am I going to respond in a different way? Am I going to grow from this experience? And so it takes practice. It takes like a willingness to be honest with yourself, which I think is a challenge for a lot of people as well. because we're just not taught the tools. Like, we're just not given the tools to do that. If anything, we're taught to like constantly be distracted, constantly numb ourselves, constantly escape from everything. It's like everything in life is actually like working against us to be conscious and present with ourselves. So it really takes a brave and strong person to choose to be vulnerable, to choose to be self-aware. Like, these are like, you're going against the grain by doing that, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, how to yeah, I mean, obviously, like karma is also describing like a similar thing where it's I got like kind of lost it here for a moment. So okay, there's the structure. Yeah, yeah, exactly. That aligns with like this is good actually leading into the next point, like expectations versus what one really wants. And obviously that also means like, okay, I'm reacting like this. What do I want to communicate here? Like I had a experience where I really, really went deeply into myself and had to face like a lot of hard truth, and that reconnected me with the subconscious, where it led to the point where I understood that the intellectual understanding and what the subconscious wants to communicate, they can go in very, very different directions. And it's really important to reconnect. And as you said, like we had a lot of us didn't really have the mentors, parents, or anything that were able to teach us well. Maybe they didn't know, maybe they didn't have, they had their own traumas or anything. Like development is a hard thing. We are in the human world, which is not a nice place.
Yes.
And with that, I think we can work that out. Though what I see right now in society very often is like I can only go into the male perspective. Though I've noticed a couple of things in the female side by just uh, when I was in the friend zone, I actually took my time and also listened actually, and not just feel miserable and be like, oh, I can't get anybody. Um, what there's when it comes to sexuality and dating and the male perspective, a lot of people just a lot of guys just talk with each other like, oh yeah, dude, this chick and that's nice and everything, but it's never gonna be about the wants and don't wants. And like I think we should at first learn to talk about our feelings with ourselves as men, not as this weaker person and stuff like that. No, we can do it in a masculine way, and we have another person who can relate to our issues or our feelings. It's like, oh, dude, I totally know that, because on a hormonal level, like men and women function differently.
Yes.
On the other side, there's like some bad thing I noticed. At first, I thought it was just a me thing, but apparently the usage of lube or lubricants has gone way up in the past 20 years, like massively. And after talking like to some girls and their dating experiences, when they were honest, there are a lot of experiences where girls don't even know about how much trust, how important trust actually is when it comes to sexuality. And they go like, no, lube is normal. And you're like, no, it's not.
I mean, I think people have the way that we like engage with sexuality is can be really disturbing in a lot of ways. I think a lot of people just use each other's bodies kind of to masturbate in a sense. Like, there's not actually like connection happening, because actual real connection like terrifies most people. Like, and so you can physically have sex and be completely shut down behind a wall without it feeling vulnerable. But when it does actually, and it's like it's kind of just this massive state of denial, because it's like you are engaging in the most vulnerable act by being sexually intimate with someone, but by pretending that it's not an act of intimacy and an act of vulnerability is just one of the biggest lies that people tell themselves. And to go back to what you said before, there's an interesting book that I love called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. And it's written by men, and it's all about how masculinity is like just true masculinity, like the evolved masculine is so lacking in our culture, and there's like a lot of reasons for that. And it's kind of like what you said, it's like lack of role models, men are not initiated into manhood, and so they kind of stay in this like permanent state of just who they were as boys, and these kind of like unevolved aspects of themselves. And it kind of breaks down like the different archetypes of like how that kind of expresses itself, but and like what it can mean and what a man is capable of being when he truly embodies his full masculine self and can be vulnerable, can be emotional, can be like just in his most powerful, like I think a masculine man in his most powerful form is able to do that in such a beautiful way. And it's very like rare to find that because there's so few examples of that, really.
Yeah, it's a tough road, and I'm like we're becoming. But I think I is this the author of the book like some? Does he have some Scandinavian name?
I forget. I can send it to you.
Yeah,
I forget. It's two guys that wrote it. But I think,
because they're
oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, there's a similar book like which talks about these similar topics from German-speaking psychologist. I think I looked it up if there was something in English or some other stuff, but that also yeah, he talks about that too, and about the archetypes, and like how we may everybody has an archetype they're attracted to. This is like where we men come also into place of like a lot of times we separate like the holy woman from like the whore as an archetype, but actually you can have a very feminine person that combines both. Like there's a I've been stumbling also about old legends from the Sand tribe, or like the old African tribes, which are leading back to like 60 to 80,000 years ago. And there are not too many emotional stories, but there's some stories about like how to there's one story about how to handle manlyhood, that it's a strong energy, but that you also need to calm down, and you do not need to fully interact with them all the time. So it's literally something about like flirting, and that it's okay that some people enjoy feminine energy, but you don't have to go all the way.
Yeah.
And it's the same with like there's a Celtic fairy tale I grew up with. It's like about it's about a young man who he fancies this girl, and he plans to bring her this flower, which is on an island where there's a witch, and there are a lot of bad rumors about the witch. Turns out the witch ain't so bad, and she's literally teaching him a couple of nice things. At the end of it, he wants to stay, he doesn't want to leave anyone. He's giving him the flower, like, no, you're a man now. Go ahead, get that woman.
I think like along those same lines, like just talking about kind of like masculine energy, what frustrates me is like I can sit here and I can also talk about like toxic femininity and what's wrong with women and whatnot. But what annoys me is when a man, which I think kind of happened in that conversation that made us like do this, but it annoys me when men are automatically like, but women do blah, blah, blah. When it's like, but no, if you are a man and you want to embody masculine energy, then you are the leader. Be the leader. Like that is to me, I feel like that the entire dynamics of men and women have completely flipped, where so many men have settled into this kind of passive space, which is kind of like most like kind of fuckboy player types. Like they will wait and see what girls like them. They will let the girls come to them, and then they just get to kind of sit back and be absolved of any sort of responsibility or anything like that, because they're like, well, you wanted this, like you pursued me, you came. And so they kind of take the like step back because they can. And so now women have kind of stepped into this role where they've been told like confident women text first, confident women aren't afraid to go after what they want, confident women do this and this. And so now it's like we've got women like pursuing men, chasing men, being in this like role where they feel like they have to be aggressive and they have to be competitive. And it's like actually that's really not like our true natural state. And that's why I think so many women end up frustrated and alone and sad, or they end up with men where they feel like they're their mothers and they have to nag them and they have to do all this stuff. And it's like, but if men are frustrated by that dynamic, then change it. Then
Yeah.
take initiative, be the action taker, be the man, be the one who pursues, be the one who leads in the relationship, be the one who takes accountability, who isn't afraid. That sort of like that masculine energy is hard to come by when it's
Yeah.
not ego driven, because sometimes you will find men who are very like aggressive because they think that aggressive or dominating means masculine, when
Oh
that's
yeah,
not what it means either. Like,
that's coming from the dating coach area and everything. And it's funny how like the dating or personality coaches often go into like, this is how you portray to be like this, where we are again in this wonderful, which works in the economy too. Fake it till you make it. No, that ain't working. Um, what I perceive with women in dating, though, however, like at least here in Western Europe, we have this thing where there's a difference between like what they say they want and what they actually go for.
yeah.
And I mean, this is also like with the mentorship is lacking at that point too. Like we have a lot of people who have just been raised to somewhat function and everything. And then, of course, like we have the plastic life list of like, if you have points A to D or something, then you have the happy life. But like then there's also like the lack of the reason, because there's the lack of community, because there's a lack of deeply connecting friendships too, where people go through stuff and everything, where we are also like, when that a lot of people put this and all of that into a partnership, or even worse, like they try to not connect at all, and then we end up with these wonderful older couples we all know of, like they are married, and then she talks to her friends and she's like, oh my god, man, these assholes and everything, like why am I even with them? And he comes to work and he's like, and both look very unhappy and unattractive too, and then he comes to work like, oh, women, you know what, they're just stupid. Like if you are invested and interested in a person, you actually want to interact with them. Like if they do or say something stupid, you want to confront them. But a lot of people just go for like the easy route, and there's especially something that a lot of men do. They go for the I'm gonna say like a not sugar-coated easy pussy. And obviously, the classic strategy there is like, older guy has his finances a little bit better together than like maybe the 20-something-year-olds, because like this is really hard these days. And then they go for like the younger girl, like, yeah, you are smart, you are so mature for your age. And then you have this little know nothing girl where you actually can tell like, no, she doesn't know shit. And they go like, oh really?
Yeah.
And there with these men, like, because that was something I observed too in my teenage years. Like I was very observant, always very observing about people and everything. And I noticed it, that these dudes, they would have this pretend mentor role, but they would just do it enough so they could keep the competition out of the way a little bit. Like, I'm not gonna tell you about like smart economic stuff. Like I'm gonna keep down a little bit. And it was like, yeah, we have to. There's a problem we gotta fix. And on the other hand, I've noticed there are also like women who are in their 40s or older who maybe went through their development and they got it, and they are still in this stage of frustration. And so the mentorship thing, that there's also like getting a little bit tough. But like with the young people, I think like what we have to fix here is. To everybody who might be listening in or seeing this at a later point, like if you can just be honestly there for somebody who's younger when they have questions, answer what you can answer. If you can't answer something, tell it to them. They won't be angry. They will be very glad that they were finally have somebody who's at least honestly trying to listen.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It was like kind of a long rambling, but oh yeah, accepting femininity, masculinity.
Good though.
And yeah, maybe I'm going into something personal here. Like my appearance is mostly masculine. I looked at pictures lately with a friend of mine, and it was like pictures from my 20th birthday party. And I remember how I felt back then. I felt insecure. I didn't want to be masculine. I had all of this stuff in my head that the grade school system punched in so hard, that I really tried to deny all of that. Though, like my parents, I wasn't looking like that. I wasn't perceived like that. But the how I perceived myself was obviously a lot different. I felt so freaking insecure, and that led to a lot of interesting experiences where, like, I recently tweeted about it, where I had like that phase of dating sometimes interacted, or at least that were the girls I got to interact with. Like some actually tried to bully the shit out of me so they could feel that I'm on their level now, so that they could get with me. And it was so weird. Dating in your 20s, it's great. Um, and yeah, but then later on in life, after like all the self-development and everything, I learned to re-accept that into my life. And one thing we have in society, in men and women, I would say, is that we forbid ourselves from like the from aggression in general. We see it as a bad thing. Aggression is just like a very sharp tool. We can use it. If I step forward, ask out a girl, that's going to be a little bit of an aggressive behavior. That's going to be a pinch of it in.
Mm-hmm.
But to be able to access this, I need to be able to handle my own aggression. And I've heard about couples who were like together for a long time and everything seemed great on the surface, but then at home he would maybe sometimes snap and like throw a wall against the wall or anything, because he never learned how to properly handle that. It was just like this fake behavior. So, but you really gotta go into the emotion. You really have to understand what's happening, so you don't get to the point where you lose control. You can only lose control of things that are you don't fully accept in yourselves, and then they will take over. It's gonna happen.
Well, I think this kind of goes back to like what I was saying in the beginning, where like if you have a practice of like starting to understand your own energy. So you're starting, this is something that I think a lot of men struggle with, is identifying their emotions. And so like an emotion like comes in and it feels overwhelming or it feels uncomfortable or it feels triggering. And instead of like being able to identify it or express it in a healthy way, they suppress it or they try to like they express it in unhealthy ways. And to go back to like what you were saying about, you know, testosterone, like it is like within the masculine nature to be aggressive in certain ways. That's like that just is what testosterone makes men do. And so it's not a bad thing, but if we start to understand like everything in the world is just energy, everything that we are, that's happening, everything that is our thoughts, everything is just energy. And so if you start to understand your own masculine and feminine energy, we all have masculine energy within us, we all have feminine energy within us. And so when we start to balance those aspects within ourselves, we start to embrace and understand those aspects within ourselves, then we can understand them when we see them in relation to another. And it's like this dance that we do with someone. And so I think what people say, like when there's like this whole thing of like men can't be assertive now because of like Me Too and because women will, you know, think they're being harassed or whatever it is. But it's like, if you actually understand how energy dynamics work and you actually understand when a female energy person is inviting you into their space with their energy, then your assertiveness as a masculine man is going to be received. But if a woman's energy is closed off, not interested, and you are being aggressive to her, it's not going to be welcome. And so you have to start to understand like how to play, how to do this dance with people, you know?
Well, that also means like there needs to be clear signals from the other side, and like for like aggressive potential. Like I think the most famous aggressive potential that is displayed in women, and sadly that is a very toxic behavior that should be frowned upon and be like, no, this is not good. This is just really purely destructive. It's passive aggressiveness.
Yes,
Like
I agree with that 100%. It's not a
I,
good.
no, like there's it's only it's really they try to socially isolate someone without explaining anything. Like there is nothing that is even in a little bit way empathetic, where you could give somebody a signal like, you know, this kind of behaviors here, maybe not. It's like, no,
Well,
punish.
it's like it's skirting around the issue instead of just being direct and confronting whatever the issue is. You're just like kind of, it's manipulation. It's a form of manipulation is what it
Yeah,
is. And it's
in
also
behavior.
not, it's not being like personally accountable. So you're deciding that like if you're being passive aggressive, you've decided that someone else's behavior is not at all a reflection of you, that you have no agency in that,
Yeah,
you know? That's how I
yeah,
always read it. Like when people are being like passive aggressive, like on Twitter and stuff, I'm like, you're really just telling on yourself right now. Like
Yeah.
what you're expressing says more about you than it does about whoever it is that you're trying to be like passive aggressive about, you know?
Yeah, it's not going. I mean, like, it's also not going to help people to have a good social environment in general. Because, like, of course, that's not going to be only in. That's going to be in every social interaction. And if you see a group of people being passive aggressive together, you're like, holy shit, they must be lonely right now. And I think it's important to call people out on that and be like, you know what, passive aggressive still is aggressive. And by the way, in evolutionary psychology, we figured scientifically figured out that only some kind of monkeys, which are intelligent enough, and humans are even in the capability of being passive aggressive because you need a certain level of intelligence, and it's one of the most violent behaviors ever recorded.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like, I mean, if you go on more like a tribal level, passive aggressiveness can lead to somebody getting kicked out of the tribe. And that basically means death in nature.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And and like when I did a group therapy too to get through a lot of things, and one there we had this one not a really exercise, like we would do structures where you would go into something you felt and everything, and there were examples of like we had it two times with women where they had something where they actually felt aggression, and then they were allowed to feel it, and then they well, it was like they had made a fist, and we had a couple of people standing there, and in the group therapy thing, go like you make kind of a role play, like, okay, I'm going to the role of your ideal father, ideal mother, and then the parents, ideal parents, hold against it and go like, wow, you're strong, I notice it, I see it, but I'm going to help you so you don't hurt your others and yourself. And so they could really push through, and a lot of times they were really surprised like how much power they had, even
Yeah.
when they had like thin arms and everything. Like one time we had to have four muscular guys standing there and hold up against it because all of the adrenaline gives you a lot of power.
Yeah.
And it's important to, yeah, and this is where you come to the warrior aspect of like what women need to see in themselves too. I also did like a bit of self-defense training with a couple of girls. um so very successful. One accidentally kicked me in the gentle parts, like it was
Oh
like,
no.
this is actually what you want to do in real life. Hurts like shit though. But it's important to know that too. And like I think real strong women and the women who fascinated me most were always these women who could have the feminine side, but at one point could also become very clear about things.
Yeah. I think a lot of women, they kind of stay in defensive, like masculine energy because it makes them feel safe. Because actually, like being able to surrender to the feminine energy can feel, it feels, I mean, it's probably like, it feels as frightening to be vulnerable when you're a woman as it does when you're a man if you don't feel safe. And I think that that kind of like safety within relationships is like very hard to find nowadays.
Even in even in friendships, I would actually argue.
Yeah. Like, I think a lot of people, they cultivate like this kind of persona, this kind of like outer shell of who they believe themselves to be or who they want to be perceived as, or like who they think they're supposed to be. And and then everything else, like the relationships that they cultivate, kind of have to fall within that framework of like what they think they're supposed to experience, or what the circumstantial or superficial aspects of someone that like they've decided someone needs to check all of these boxes. But is there like that connection to like what your soul actually needs or what your heart actually needs? And I think that's why a lot of relationships end, or why a lot of marriages end in divorce, is because they were built on this like kind of fantasy in a sense, you know?
Yeah, that can add up to like this is a thing we see. I don't know how it is in the United States, but that's happening a lot in Europe, where you have these the people already come from like very fake and artificial structure through their families where they have to fill in certain roles already, and of course they're going to translate that into the relationship or the eventual marriage. And of course, like at one point you're just going to crumble. Like it's only so many generations that can keep up a lie. At one point it's going to break down.
It's interesting, right? Like, I think a lot of people, like, I'm sure you've encountered this, like, in the things that you've studied and from, like, Buddhism and stuff and meditation, but it's like a lot of people kind of exist in what is considered just like 3D reality. Like, you go to work, you make money, you watch TV, you know, have a car, whatever, all that kind of like tangible stuff. But there's like this whole other like aspect to reality, which is like multidimensional, which is like the existence of our spiritual selves. And if you're not aware of that and you're just living like you just suppress all of that, you suppress your feelings, you suppress your trauma, you suppress your deepest desires sometimes, eventually that is going to crumble. It's going to bubble to the surface. And it's
Oh,
gonna,
absolutely.
and that's why people have nervous breakdowns. That's why they have midlife crises. Like, you know, it's not like an uncommon thing to see people suddenly wake up and be like, oh my God, what have I been doing? Like living a lie my whole life or whatever, you know?
Yeah, you see too when you go into like the oncology stations in a hospital, for example. A lot of cancer patients they have different reactions. Some really just go oof, but you have those people who get the diagnosis. They know they have limited time, and then they just start cutting out all the bullshit in their lives and go like, okay, it's only so much time left. Not gonna do this anymore. That's it.
That was actually another thing that I like majorly pissed people off on Twitter, but there was like this thing going around where it was like some story about how this couple, like this woman was dying and how she came to her husband and said that she like really wanted to sleep with someone else before she died. All these people were reacting to it like that fucking whore, like blah blah blah. And I was like, but if you were like very young and you were about to die, can we have some compassion for like the person that's dying in this situation, and the fact that like she was honest about her needs and desires? It's not like she went and cheated behind his back or something like that. Like, she expressed, like, to like put yourself in the headspace of like being a 30-year-old and finding out you're gonna die in 6 months or whatever. But it was like there was zero like, to me, moments like that on Twitter make me realize like how deeply ingrained in people like misogyny, like literal genuine deeply ingrained hatred of the feminine that a lot of men hold, a lot of women hold. It manifests in self-loathing. It manifests itself in a lot of ways. It's a real thing. And when that whole thing happened on Twitter, like, and people's reactions to it and just the hatred that was like coming through people of these strangers, these absolute strangers, this story that could have been made up, it could have been a fake story, and you're so angry at this woman for what? For being this like whore that you've decided in your mind. And that was like one of my experiences on Twitter where I was like, wow, like there really is. I mean, I think this all the time now that I've been on Twitter in this community for a while. I'm used to it now at this point, but like the internalized like misogyny and just like deep self-loathing around that is like really fascinating to me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, there's the tendency where it's like, okay, let's wind back everything that happened. I'm like, no, let's wind back until like 2006, because I remember that being a very good time, a time where things were getting more open. And I mean, cheating always happens. Like, we have this beautiful example of like the good Christian family, and then you look at them like, oh God, like, there's many such cases as we've seen on Twitter too. And sure, like, I mean, maybe the better idea is to like communicate first, then act, and go
Or
ahead. Like,
communicate. Sometimes just communicating, like that was the thing that I was like, wow, like people are really on another wavelength from me. But to me, it's like just being honest, being able to be honest with your partner at all costs should be a value in relationships. Even if it's not a truth that you want to hear, can you work through it together? Can you have an honest conversation with each other where you like listen to what each other needs and you come to compromise? Like how can you compromise with someone if you can't even communicate with them? And that is like communication skills and communication and honesty in relationships is like something that so few people value or seem to even understand. Like they would rather suppress, or they would rather escape, or they would rather deny, or they would rather like just live in like a perpetual cycle that keeps repeating itself instead of like just being honest and communicating and learning how to communicate effectively.
Yeah, I mean that leads into actually we're doing this very well. Like I structured it, like the structure it just comes naturally. It's awesome.
Good.
Like here in the end point, I have like what is self-esteem, and I'm something I've noticed like with developing self-esteem too. Like self-esteem, a lot of people would think that self-esteem is this state which it's just great, it's just hyper, but like no, with every good thing in life at one point it will feel good at the beginning and you won't feel bad about it later, but it just becomes something natural and something easy that is just there. And self-esteem is like the same thing, and self-esteem is only the thing that you know where you are and who you stand, where you stand, who you are and where you stand. And so and at first, of course, it's noticing like, okay, what are my economical, or how's my economic situation? How's the reality of things? And from that, you got to move on, because this is obviously the person that wants to go into the relationship, which is something we all need to understand too. Like for the longest time, I was looking for like, and then she's gonna fix this problem, and everything magically disappears, and blah blah blah, and then, oh, somebody's so good, I can't take it, and I had a learning process where I learned to take things, and at times it was very overwhelming to just accept the good things. Didn't work out. It didn't become anything in the end. There were some signals. It doesn't matter. The important part was like this really understanding and accepting of what's happening inside. And the funniest is like I once had a situation where two dudes were drunkenly being angry about their ex-girlfriends and what kind of dumb bitches they are. And I was like, you guys dated those dumb bitches, so like
Right.
they were like, oh, you don't understand love. I was like, if this is love, I don't want it.
Yeah.
It felt like there was something else, and I think I found that at least this point of the self-acceptance, which is what you bring into any potential relationship, and what makes a potential partner also a more real person. Like I'm glad I'm not seeing women anymore in the light of like these shining, beautiful angels that do all the good. No, it's like it feels good to see like the person and with different potentials.
Well, and I think like going along with the self-esteem thing, it's like I think you meet who you really are in your most challenging moments, in the most uncomfortable times in your life, in the darkest times of your life. Like that's the real you. That's where you're humbled. That's where you find out who you really are. And I also think that like I know for me, like in the darkest times in my life, I was going through like the absolute like worst parts of my life and learning who I was. I came to this realization where I was like, what type of a person do I want to show up as in a relationship? And I really thought about that for a long time. And I put a lot of effort into figuring out how to be the best version of myself and figuring out how to be the best partner to someone. And it's like, I know now when I come into relationship with others, I know what I bring to the table. I know what I have to offer. And so it's like, how can you expect someone to provide all of these amazing things for you if you haven't, if you're not offering the same in return, if you're not an ideal part? Oh my God, my cat. if you're not an ideal partner for someone in return, like it's kind of a little unfair to expect a person to like be your savior, you know? And I think like something I've had to learn, a lesson I've had to learn is like not falling in love with people's potential, like not thinking that like I can bring out the good in someone and that I, you know, because you always end up disappointed and it's always a trauma bond. It's always like a just an imbalance of energy because it's again it's like it's not two fully formed people coming together to uplift each other, to you know water each other's gardens, to help each other grow, to create something new together. It's like you're just acting out these trauma patterns, and it's like that is the most dysfunctional drain of your energy, to be in a relationship where it's just difficult, like that level of difficult, you know? And it's like a relationship should be easy in a sense that like it is expanding you, you know? But to get to that point, you as an individual have to be ready to do that. And that's why we go through these challenging relationships, and hopefully we learn from them and we don't keep repeating these same messed up cycles and these same trauma bonds, because we're learning and we're integrating and we're doing the work to like not fall into those same grooves again, and to start to choose different behaviors and choose different people and different patterns, you know.
And yeah, that can also mean like a break thing, like something to share. Probably is like almost 5 years ago, I realized I had a pattern and something was going on. I was like, kind of want to work through this, and so I stayed out of all of it, dating and no one night stand whatsoever. Like just not go into it because I had an experience where I was dating someone, then didn't became a thing, and then she ended up with a dude who turned out like to be. I wasn't the best guy, but I wasn't the worst guy, and he was like so bad. I was like, I got replaced by this. Like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Maybe I should figure out like some woman who can see more of the value you have.
Yeah.
And but that is like that put me on the way of working through a lot of things which need to happen, of course,
Yeah.
and to also like to figure out like what do I actually want. And I mean, at first it was like I want the smart intelligent. Okay, smart intelligent, there are a lot of smart intelligent women, cool. But what else do we want? And then I figured like, oh, I do like feminine behavior a little bit more, actually. I don't like the strong lonely fighter anymore and stuff like that. uh, but of course, yeah, that requires that you must be able to also have the don't have the trust issues where if somebody sees something good in you, that you are in denial with it. If
Yeah.
that is a problem, that's probably gonna be become an issue in a relationship too at one point.
Yes. People, I mean, I know there's a couple people that I've dated who they fully self-sabotaged the relationship, and I've watched them do it, where I just like watched them get in their own way because they couldn't accept that something good was like happening in their life. And that just and it, like when you're on the like receiving end of that and there's like really nothing that you can do, it's like you just kind of have to be like, you have to recognize that that person, that's about them, it's not about you, you know. But it's true, it's like if you have gotten used to like being hurt, or your life have you've experienced a lot of trauma, a lot of betrayal, a lot of whatever in relationships, a lot of abuse, it actually is very scary and very confronting to let good things into your life. People don't
Yeah,
realize that. It's like, yeah, you can say like you want this beautiful magical relationship, but are you ready for it?
yeah,
Are you ready for it?
yeah, yeah. You
Because
need to be
it's gonna
able.
scare the shit out of you, maybe. Like, you know, like are you ready for that? Like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like you need to learn to be able to accept compliments and accept behavior that is not like the usual thing that you had before. And again, that usually also translates in the people you hang around with, you spend your free time with, you
yes.
surround yourself with. It's like when you meet some if you you need to be your own change too. That's where it starts. And this is where I'm like where I think like the mentoring thing is just so important these days. That we do become more active mentors, and obviously also seek for mentors if we can find them in certain areas.
Yes.
Though, like, I think the older we become, it becomes a little bit harder to get like find a mentor.
Yeah.
Can happen though.
Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, I know that I've had like a lot of influential people come in and out of my life, and I think when what is the saying? When the student is ready, the teacher appears,
Yeah.
and that can happen at any point in your life. Like it really can, you know, because your life takes so many twists and turns. Like age doesn't. You're never too old to like do anything, right?
Oh no, that's true. Like,
You're
and until
never
you're dead, you have potential.
you're never too old to learn. You're never too old to grow. You're never too old to do better. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
And your mentors don't always necessarily need to be older than you either. Like sometimes we learn from children even. Sometimes
Oh,
children have
absolutely.
so much to teach us. So
Yeah. I mean, like this is basically also like one part I've noticed in myself. Like the one thing where you reconnect to your subconscious and to that thing, it's this purity. A lot of people keep looking for in the outside world, but that purity that's here, it's there inside.
yes.
A- And this is if you can reconnect to that and hold it up, then you can have like this almost childlike um, what's the word I'm looking for here? Excitement about the world and things to have. Just
It's like
unlike it.
it's like an innocence, right? Like
Yeah.
I feel like when I was a child, I had like a very profound understanding of love. Like when I look back on like my understanding of love as a child, and it's like so much of adulthood was like stamping that down or like pushing it away or making that jaded or just like covering it up, what all these things. And that process of like meditation and coming back to yourself is coming back to that childlike curiosity, wonder, inspiration, just start the childlike way of looking through the world through these like through like a clear lens where everything is pure and everything is love and everything is divine. And we can come back to that is our natural state, I believe.
Yeah.
you know
It is. Yeah, pretty much. I believe it too. So, as I said, like that's definitely the thing we're looking for. Like we have these with the toxic relationships too. Like you have these so many relationships where you have like this, where you have like there we go again with the dynamic where you have the younger girl who maybe is really cool and she has this purity and she is maybe really strong and nice for her age, and then you have these guys. I'm like, I'm coming in. Oh, I need that myself. Like I once talked to a dude the first time I met him, I was 14, and he had a great relationship at that point. I don't know all the details, and later on they broke up, but she definitely loved him like crazy. And later on, after like 10 years later or something, he was got married to another woman, and then one night he talked to me, he was like, I've never felt love like this and everything. I was like, but you have been loved like this. This is where we are at the point again, which you said, like, yeah, you have to be able to accept that. It probably was there before. I know that with some of my ex-girlfriends, it has been there before, but I was so not ready.
yeah yeah Interesting.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, find the purity within yourself, like, and it is in us men too. Like when we don't lose the masculinity. Like I also like did some, with guys. It's like if you hang around like you want to bump your heads, and like sometimes you go like, okay, you know what, maybe we shouldn't fight too seriously, but come on, let's test our strength and everything. And so far, I've always won. So no issue in that area. Um, but the purity and everything is still possible. You can still be a protector and have all the strong aspects of a typical masculine person. Yeah.
I think that being the protector too is something that like I find lacking in a lot of men is like understanding that being the protector doesn't just mean like physically protecting someone. It means protecting the relationship, protecting the woman's energy, protecting her heart, protecting her name. So like what we were talking about earlier, where like, you know, if you see people in relationships and they talk shit about their partners, or they like gossip about their relationship, they turn to other people for guidance. And it's like, no, the container of your relationship should be sacred, and you should hold it sacred and protect it and protect the person that you're with. And if you don't have the desire to do that, then why are you with that person?
Yeah.
You know?
And then there's a protective energy, which I kind of select, and like you want to protect the purity of the relationship, but also like, of course, like your own purity. This is basically this is what both people should do. Like, we should have a discussion when something is happening, because we have needs that need to be communicated, and no, other people cannot read minds.
No. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of people are just like asleep, kind of, you know?
Yeah, and like, I mean, all one can do is like, everybody can just develop for themselves, and if somebody's asking questions, like, one can help and answer them. Uh, Nobody is perfect. Nobody knows everything. But with this exchange of knowledge, I think we can create something better, and maybe look towards a brighter future,
Yep.
even in this day and age.
I'll keep doing what I'm doing, trying to help people as much as I can. That's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
You
I'm,
know?
I plan to do something more on that too, but at first I have to take care of myself and get myself out of a very beautiful city area. That's
Where are you right now?
in a bigger Austrian city, and in a very good neighborhood that's totally not triggering my PTSD. So I got to remove that first to not be stressed out anymore.
Is that where you grew up? Is that where you're
No, no, I moved here in 2018, and I grew up in like in northern Germany, and then moved to Berlin, moved to Vienna. A lot of exploring myself, loads of adventures and experiences had.
So where would you want to be?
At the moment, not the city,
Yeah.
closer to nature, and the plan is still to go to the United States. I mean, I'll be hanging out in Hungary a lot more, and found like that's a lot more calming,
Okay.
and there's some good connections with people there. And depending on however crazy Europe becomes right now, uh, I'll see where I end up. If I can, I wanted to go. I want to go to the United States. If I can't,
Where in the US would you want to go?
gotta figure that out. I'm gonna visit some friends. I mean, probably somewhere where a trades job is appreciated, where like there are the rents and real estate prices aren't too bad for having your own business.
Yeah.
Economical stuff everywhere, but yeah, basically, I'll see about that. There are gotta go there first physically. Meet
Have
some.
you ever been here before?
Yeah, as a child, I'll be over in December and January.
Where?
First, I don't know. Depends on like where two of my friends live around Christmas. If they still live in California, I'll be in California for like 24 hours,
Okay.
and then probably spend the rest of the year in Orlando. There might be from Orlando, from Florida, going to North Carolina with two friends to celebrate New Year's, and then after that, I haven't fully figured it out yet.
So you're coming for like a long trip.
Yeah, like I'm hoping I get like almost 3 weeks of vacation. Maybe celebrate my birthday in the United States. Who knows?
Okay. Well, fun.
Yeah. And you're happy with where you live right now?
Yes and no. I mean, I love my life here, but like obviously on a political level, it's there's concerns, you know, but my family's here, my whole life is here, my whole career is here. So I don't know. I wouldn't be opposed to leaving. I feel the energy of the city is a little overwhelming, and I would love to be like closer to nature and stuff, but I don't have any like sort of plan to initiate that or anything. I don't feel called to like really do that on my own. So like if there was a reason for me to leave and be somewhere else, I wouldn't be like opposed to that. But for now, I might as well stay here.
Yeah, I mean, reasons can always happen.
Did we have any like comments or anything? Is anybody watching?
Yes, my mother is watching, and she was like
Aw.
your clarity. I like your clarity, guys. I enjoyed that very much.
Oh, I
So,
love that.
so yeah, you said you had like about an hour, like from the notes I've had, like we went basically through everything
Okay, cool.
in a perfect manner, actually.
Awesome. Are you gonna you're gonna put this up on your YouTube or it stays up there?
Yeah, it's gonna stay up there. Like when I end the
Okay,
broadcast, it's gonna like stream ended, and then the video's there.
okay, cool.
So I think the same link should still work, unless you have a problem with that.
No, that's good.
Okay. Yeah,
Yay.
cool.
Well, good talk.
Yeah, I'm gonna end this